We are now days away from President Trump's second State of the Union address. A senior administration official told reporters Friday the theme of the speech is, quote, choosing greatness, and will focus on 5 top areas, including a safe and legal immigration system, protecting American workers, infrastructure, the cost of health care and prescription drugs, and national security. The White House also released an excerpt from the president's address where he calls for bipartisanship, saying, quote, together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make. Let's bring in now Michael Graham and Joel Payne. Michael is a CBSN political contributor, conservative columnist, and politics editor for nhjournal.com. He joins us from Boston. And Joel is a Democratic strategist and former Senate leadership aide. He's in San Francisco. Welcome to both of you. I'm going to start with the same question for both of you. What are your overall expectations for the president's address? Michael, let's start with you.
Well, when was the last time anybody remembered something that was said at a State of the Union? The only line in my adult lifetime I can remember was Bill Clinton saying the era of big government is over, and he was lying. So, you know, the fact is, State of the Union addresses in my life have never had a lingering impact on policy or on the presidency. And so I'm expecting, what would normally be low expectations. They're even zero now, because if President Trump, if this excerpt that we've seen is accurate, this president is just not the person who can make the appeal for bipartisanship. And it runs in both ways. He has not done much to foster it, and Speaker Pelosi has certainly not shown any sign that she's interested in it. So my expectations are very low. So
Joel, less than zero expectations from Michael. What about you?
Well, Tanya, and Michael makes some good points there. Just the excerpts that you shared, what that tells me is that this is really an opening argument from the president for his 2020 campaign. This sounds like a man who is trying to reframe things. He's been chastened here over the last few weeks. He took a beating with the government shutdown fight. I imagine he'll try to reframe that in this speech as well. Michael's right. These things historically aren't memorable, but in the moment they can kind of help reshift focus and, reassert authority. This is the ultimate bully pulpit. I think the president's probably going to try and use it.
And Joel, Stacey Abrams, the former Democratic candidate for governor of Georgia, will be delivering the Democrats' response to the State of the Union. What type of message does she need to deliver?
I think Stacey Abrams is really going to deliver the message that she did in Georgia, which was effective. Even though it did not lead to victory, it certainly did lead to a lot of breakthroughs and is about as strong a performance as we've seen from a Democrat in that state in a long time. We're going to hear that message expanded nationally. But I think it's less important actually what she's going to say in terms of her message. It's more important in terms of what she represents as a woman, as a person of color. This represents a shift in how the Democratic Party is talking to the electorate and in who they want to be their spokespersons. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi called her because they want her to be the face of the Democratic Party. They want Democrats all over the country, and they want independents, and they want people all over the country to see her as the new face of the Democratic Party. I think that's the value she brings to this response.
Okay, Joel, so you see the selection of Abrams as a broader shift in terms of Democratic strategy. Michael, what about you?
Well, it's interesting. I think she may be the first private citizen to ever deliver the response for a party to a State of the Union. I think that's true, and so that's interesting. And I happen to have interviewed Stacey Abrams several times, and I did talk radio down in Atlanta. She's very smart. She's going to no doubt give a great speech. But she also represents something else other than the historic things that she represents as someone who really outperformed in Georgia. She was a great candidate. She represents, in the eyes of people on the right, the kind of sour grapes wing, if you will, of the Democratic Party. People who are still litigating what happened in 2016. That's how the people on the right view the Mueller investigation, what happened, the demand for recounts in Florida and Georgia. And so if the goal of the Democrats is to once again reach across the aisle, I don't know that Stacey Abrams is the ideal choice for that.
I wonder if the Democrats are so worried about reaching across the aisle at that
Exactly.
moment, though. All right, so
Tanya, I'm just worried because I actually think that all of these people who give these responses look small in comparison
right.
to the president.
Right.
So I think Stacey Abrams is a wonderful spokesperson, but I think anyone is going to look small in comparison to the bully pulpit
Have
of
faith, Joel.
being in the
Have
well
faith.
of the House chamber.
good
She
point.
could be the next Bobby Jindal. Hang in there, buddy. Don't give up on her yet.
All right. I want to play a clip from President Trump's interview with Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. Here's what he had to say about Nancy Pelosi and whether he's considering declaring a national emergency. Let's listen.
You had quite the showdown with Speaker Pelosi. What did you learn about negotiating with her?
Well, I think that she was very rigid, which I would expect, but I think she is very bad for our country. She knows that you need a barrier. She knows that we need border security. She wanted to win a political point. I happen to think it's very bad politics because basically she wants open borders. She doesn't mind human trafficking, or she wouldn't do this because, you know,
She
the
offered you over
traffickers.
$1 billion for border security.
Excuse me?
She offered over $1 billion for border security. She doesn't want the wall.
She's costing the country hundreds of billions of dollars because what's happening is when you have a porous border and when you have drugs pouring in and when you have people dying all over the country because of people like Nancy Pelosi who don't want to give proper border security for political reasons, she's doing a terrible disservice to our country.
And that full interview will air Sunday on CBS before Super Bowl 53. But, Michael, do you see this being the top legislative priority out of the president's speech? And do you think that's a smart strategy?
Well, once again, the bipartisan part, I mean, you just saw right there. That's not exactly what's going on here. You know, President Trump is kind of in a bind. On the one hand, he made the wall a kind of a touchstone, and we don't want to get sidetracked on the whole conversation. I happen to agree that it's kind of a metaphor. In other words, any kind of structure he gets, the point he wanted to make in his campaign is take immigration violations seriously. A lot of Americans are frustrated by that, and so he owned that. That's fine. But on the other hand, he could theoretically get the stuff that the smart people at the Center for Immigration Studies, for example, say really works. Things like mandatory e-verify and more interior enforcement. And so Trump could actually end up costing himself a deal that works on border security because of the bind he's put himself in. He has to get a physical barrier of some kind. That's the promise he's made. Right.
Well, you make a very interesting point, though, because it seems to have, boiled down to this physical barrier when there's a lot of money for other stuff, as you point out, that could be very effective. And we are 2 weeks away from another partial government shutdown. Joel, is the president going to focus on border security in the State of the Union? Do you think that will be his top issue?
Oh, I'm sure border security, immigration reform will be a heavy part of that speech. But, what I listen to when I hear the president talk, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like a guy for the first time, the bully has gotten bullied. He met his match. And he sounds like a guy who got his teeth kicked in out on the street and is trying to explain himself to his friends later. Oh, she was rigid. Oh, she didn't want to make a deal. Oh, she's doing things that are terrible for the country. He does not have a message against Nancy Pelosi because for the first time in his political career, he's met his match. He's met somebody who's just as powerful as he is in terms of their actual constitutional powers, and someone who is just as sturdy on her beliefs as he is on his. And I don't think he's figured out how to combat her yet. He may be able to figure that out, but he has not yet. And that's clear to me from that interview and from other availabilities we've heard from the president in recent days.
So, Michael, has the president boxed himself into a corner of his own creation? Will he be alienating his base entirely if he doesn't get this physical border wall and they can say, oh, you caved to Democrats again?
Right. I think that the Trump trajectory is kind of like the old line about how do you go bankrupt very slowly then all at once. I mean, there could be a tipping point out there. We may reach it and not even see it coming. And then, boom, all of a sudden, his support among Republicans drops from its current 80% to 30%. I don't know. But I will say that I was with a bunch of Republicans at the state convention in New Hampshire the day after Trump backed down and said we're going to reopen the government for 3 weeks. And I asked a bunch of them, and it was a mix of kind of moderate Romney types and then hardcore Trump types. What do you think of the president's performance? And the number one word that came out was disappointing. They hadn't given up on him, and a lot of them said, well, we'll see what happens next. But they were disappointed. That's not good news for the president.
No, not indeed, not at all. Now,
Tanya, really
yes.
quickly, really quickly, something to watch that I think maybe a lot of people missed. There was a resolution at an RNC meeting recently that Romney passed that essentially blocked anybody from challenging President Trump. And that was so interesting to me, Michael. I'm sure you caught it. And also the president tweeting about it on his timeline. That showed a real vulnerability, that he felt like he was vulnerable in these days where he took such a massive loss on the government shutdown that he had to defend his right flank at the RNC. I thought that was fascinating, and I thought that did not get a lot of coverage.
Well, I want to clarify one thing. It didn't say no one could run. What it said was, that we support the president. There was another proposal that got killed, which was we are going to endorse the president as an incumbent, and he's our only choice. In other words, kind of pre-nominate him, and that plan was killed. And I think that's interesting too.
All right. Speaking of 2020, Senator Cory Booker Friday became the latest Democrat to announce his presidential campaign. In the president's interview, he said he is not impressed with any of the Democrats running for president and that Booker has, quote, no chance. So, Joel, first off, what do you make of that?
Oh, well, this is the president trying to round out his attack lines against all these potential people that he may have to run against. And, like most presidents, what they would do is they would say, I'm not going to punch down. I'm going to let these guys fight, these men and women fight over the Democratic nomination, and I'll wait, and then I'll define someone at the end. President Trump is different. He's saying, I'm going to define Cory Booker. I'm going to define Elizabeth Warren. I'm going to define Beto O'Rourke, right? When each of these Democrats have kind of risen up, he's already starting to punch down. And that's actually not something we've seen from presidents in the past. So I think that's a very interesting, tack that he's taking.
So, Michael, before I get your take, I just want to mention that the NH Journal poll taken earlier this month, which found that the president is trailing behind Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Bernie Sanders, and former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. So what does all of that tell you, Michael?
I mean, President Trump is in trouble in New Hampshire, and part of it is because New Hampshire is no longer really a purple state. It's really a mostly blue state with a little flash of purple here and there. But part of it is that President Trump's numbers have been sagging, particularly from the government shutdown period. It's just he's in a tough spot. But back to Senator Cory Booker, he's a really fascinating character. There was a time when he was one of the Wall Street Journal's favorite Democrats. He went to Newark. He was fighting the establishment. He supported setting kids free from crummy government school systems and letting them escape to the private sector schools nearby, and to lift people up from poverty. He has pretty much transformed himself into a kind of standard where the party is progressive. And I asked one of his big supporters, who's one of the leading Democrats in New Hampshire, tell me what's going to differentiate him. Tell me where he's different. He started going through, well, he's for Medicare for all. He's for, fighting climate change. Whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's everybody. And I think that's going to be interesting watching Joel and his team try to figure out how are you going to have these debates when the policy differences are so narrow. When you have narrow policy differences, politics tend to turn personal, and personal is ugly.
Well, Joel, what do you think of
They
that?
say
Because
follow them.
I just want to point out that he certainly
Tanya.
has a great personal story. I mean, he moved into the projects of Newark and lived in the projects for 8 years. I mean, not a lot of politicians can say that.
No, and he certainly has a compelling story. He's frankly got as good a chance as anybody. And a lot of Democrats I talk to, we're excited. Here's why. There's a fight that's going to happen for the Democratic nomination that we really have not seen in a long time. Even if you go back to Obama versus Clinton, Clinton was thought to be the front runner from day one. You go back, obviously, 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was the front runner. There is no front runner right now. Anybody could be the nomination. Any of 7 or 8 people could realistically be the Democratic nominee. And I think that's something that's invigorating the party. And particularly in regards to Cory Booker, here's all I would say. One of the phrases we like to use in politics is follow the money. I'm going to say follow the charisma, okay? Whether it's Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, Kirsten Gillibrand, on and on. Follow the charisma. That's what the party's going to do. Because Michael's right. Everyone agrees on Medicare for all and on, health care, fixing Obamacare, and, all of those types of issues. Those are stock Democratic issues. But it's really about the charisma. Who can stand on stage and counterpunch with Donald Trump? I think that's what the party's looking for.
I would argue that some of the party, though, will be following the money as well, especially this time around when so many Democrats are proud of not taking corporate donations.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point, Tanya. They're always going to follow the money. But how about this? Follow the money and the charisma.
Right. All right. Point taken. All right. Finally, Super Bowl 53 is this Sunday with the New England Patriots taking on the Los Angeles Rams. Michael, in a new piece for NHJournal.com, you write, yes, America really hates Patriots Nation and New Englanders love it. Explain that.
Yep. Go Pats, first of all, as I am here in Boston. Now, I got to tell you, I grew up down south, and where pro ball didn't really matter. We were all college fans. When I never went to a place where I saw the same passion for pro sports as I saw in UCLA, like Michigan, and Tennessee and Alabama, until I got to New England. These people are stinking crazy about sports, and they don't care at all. They will. The polls came out. 75% of Americans say they want the Patriots to lose. I saw another poll. 61% said they want them to lose. And the people who are pulling for the Rams, half of them aren't pulling for the Rams. They're just pulling against the Patriots. And so I talked to a bunch of prominent people, including Governor Charlie Baker here, who's a very nice, moderate, mild Republican. And he said, "Forget them. We want to win. We love it. We want more." And so New England is basking in the hate. They have a message for you, America. Bring it.
Bring it. All you haters, bring it. Joel, what's your take? Any Super Bowl predictions?
Yeah, my prediction is that America will be united. One thing no politician or political party can do: unite America against the Patriots. I'm in California right now. I'm from New Jersey. I'm going to be wearing a Rams jersey come Sunday.
I love it. I love it. Both sides. We always never say we don't represent both sides here on CBSN. All right, Michael Graham and Joel Payne, thank you so much to both of you.